welcome Nicolas Cage.
This is a YouTube channel, and for us, it's a symbol of our individuality and our belief in personal freedom. Because this week, it's Wild at Heart from 1990, directed by the late, great David Lynch.
You have the chance of getting something where, people can see something in the dark that they can never see anywhere else. And it's thrilling to the soul. That's the idea.
So when I was about 9 or 10, I already loved Laura Dern because she was obviously in Jurassic Park, my favourite film when I was a wee little kid. I remember being round my cousins one day when I was about 9 or 10. All the women were clucking at each other like they do, and as always happens, the dad or the uncle has gone off into the other room to watch telly by themselves because they can't be bothered with it. So I snuck off to see what he was up to, and my uncle was watching Wild at Heart, and I instantly recognised Laura Dern. I wonder if this is like Jurassic Park, and I sat down and started watching it, and it was the first time I'd ever been introduced to a different kind of film, not just an adult film, but a crazy film. A David Lynch film. Didn't know who David Lynch was, wasn't really into movies at this time, but it was the first time I'd ever seen anything like it. Completely bonkers, unconventional narrative and storytelling, bizarre characters and side characters, scenes that seem to add nothing to the plot and go nowhere, but end up being some of the most memorable moments. It was my first favourite film and the first film that introduced me to the idea that there was a big world out there outside of your conventional mainstream blockbusters. I just loved it. I just couldn't believe what I was watching. A lot of times when you love a film when you're a kid, it can seem like a totally different film when you revisit it years later. I've never had that with this film. It's one of the few films that I have the exact same visceral feeling from it that I had when I was a little kid as I do now. It's so intense, so crazy, so bonkers, so unusual and unpredictable and genius without any pretense at all. And that is what sums up what was so great about so many of David Lynch's films. R.I.P.
It's kind of sad to be sitting here in this situation with a giant of film having left us, but it kind of gives you the opportunity to go back and see what was before. And I have seen Wild at Heart before, but many years ago, and it was refreshing to see it. Obviously I remember the bare bones of the plot. I haven't seen this film for over 10 years. Anything Nicolas Cage is in is a thrill ride, but I didn't remember how eccentric he was in this film. And it's hard to put Lynch in a category or any of his films in category because they're so out there. I call Wild at Heart a southern gothic masterpiece.
Yeah, well, you're definitely right there. He is a category of his own, even when they're in totally different genres, other than A Straight Story, which is actually the only David Lynch film we've reviewed so far on this channel for whatever reason. Pretty much all of them fit into its own bizarre, weird Lynchian category, no matter what genre it's in or what the story is about, what the budget is, whatever. I'd describe it as a warped fairy tale. It is to a Wizard of Oz what Bad Boy Bubby is to Forrest Gump. It's the dark, twisted, over-the-top, equally as insane and unrealistic, but somehow more grounded version of its counterpart film. You don't have to study critical film theory for 4 years at university to make the comparison to Wizard of Oz, because it beats you over the head with the symbolism for the whole film. And I don't know if you can even call it symbolism, because it is interjected to points where it's just ridiculous. Clearly Lula, played by Laura Dern, is Dorothy. I guess Nicolas Cage is the Tin Man and the Scarecrow and the Lion all thrown into one, because at times he kind of exhibits those things. And also, weirdly, it was originally cut from the original Wizard of Oz film, but the Scarecrow and Dorothy were actually supposed to have a romance, as most of the characters in Oz are a direct reflection and played by the same actors as characters in a real life in Kansas. The character that the Scarecrow was supposed to be reflecting in Kansas was hinted at as a love interest back home. But anyway, I guess he represents all of them as, her companion who becomes her guide and goes on a journey with her. Her mum is obviously the Wicked Witch of the West, and she literally, at times, cackles like the Wicked Witch. during some of Lula's hallucinations or visions or whatever they are, sees her mum appearing dressed as the Wicked Witch, riding a broom. So the symbolism is not symbolism, it's just right there, interjected into the plot, and it uses the exact same sort of fairy tale like imagery from The Wizard of Oz, contrasts up against this fucking horrific, brutal violence and disturbing scenes, and it just makes for such a unique film experience.
Yeah, from what I understand, Declan, the source material of Wild at Heart was a book. David Lynch picked it up, he loved it. There was no reference into Wizard of Oz in it, but David Lynch, being the genius, maverick,
Psycho,
whatever you want to call him, I'm going to go genius maverick, picked it up and thought, this is good, I like it, but how can I put my Lynch take on this? How can I make this surreal? What I'm going to do is use one of the most famous surreal films of all time, Wizard of Oz.
When I read Barry Gifford's book, I fell in love with Sailor and Lula.
In the hands of other directors, you'd think, what the fuck? I do wonder if Lynch was on a load of drugs a lot of the time. It kind of reminds me of, remember when you used to watch that show Ren and Stimpy? And you used to be
brilliant
like,
show.
Jesus Christ, this is trippy as hell. I'm sure the creators were on some sort of acid. But in his masterful hands, it just fits into the movie seamlessly. You notice it, but it's not like it's just random and detracts from the plot. He makes it work somehow. There's a scene later on where Lula's mother is throwing up. I don't know, was it a suicide attempt, what she had done? I'm not sure, but it zooms into her shoes and she's got the curled up shoes of the Wicked Witch of the West. This is mad, but genius.
It's so mad and so like, hammy and obvious, but it's brilliant how obvious it is, because a lot of the film is intentionally obvious in every sense. Like stylistically, there's a moment where Laura Dern's sitting in bed after one of the many sex scenes, fucking awesome sex scenes by the way. She's lying in bed in the motel afterwards and she hears some laughing and cackling from a woman next door, and it reminds her of something, and we learn later it reminds her of the night that her dear old daddy, as she calls him, as far as she knows, killed themselves. We find out later was murdered, and it's because her mum was cackling because she had actually helped organise the murder of her dad. But it makes her have a flashback when she hears the woman laughing next door, and it literally instantly fades to a close-up of a window burning and then fades back to Laura Dern, and it's nearly like something that the guy who made The Room would do, because it's so blatant and overly in your face. But the whole film is like that, and it's beautiful. It's kind of like when Tarantino or Rodriguez intentionally does a high production value homage to the low production value 70s schlock horror movies that they love so much, because it's like he's on purpose going against the normal conventions of storytelling and stuff to create this weird warped world, but he pulls it off because he is such a genius. He can pull it off. And everything, like the obnoxious guitar soundtrack that kicks in at certain moments where it's just like loud and in your face and just over the top.
Hurricane. Stabbing and steer.
Or a lot of the soundtrack, at times he'll have the kind of horror movie score accents that will suddenly come in to punctuate a moment where it's just cutting to Laura Dern's mother, for some reason smearing lipstick all over her face.
Yeah? What's wrong, man?
Johnny.
And then it cuts back to tranquil music because we're seeing Sailor and Lula driving towards New Orleans. It's kind of like music you'd have in a moment of a monster movie, as the monster is demolishing buildings in New York. But it's used in these more grounded, sort of everyday general moments, and it's all part of the bizarre tapestry he puts together to create this bizarre experience that shouldn't work on any level on paper.
And music, plays a huge role in creating that sense of place and mood. And so it's extremely important.
If you pumped it into the best AI system in the world, backed up by a quantum computer modem, it still wouldn't work out why this ends up being such an entertaining, great film experience.
The soundtrack struck me because a lot of it's based on heavy metal, isn't it? They go out to a dark, seedy club. They're in the middle of a mosh pit listening to heavy music, and I'm not going to do it because I can't do it, but I love the way they dance, like the way Nicolas Cage jumps up and seemingly does like karate kicks, like as he's dancing. someone knocks into his bird and he makes him apologise. And then suddenly Declan, in classic Lynch style, he just starts serenading her with some weird is it Elvis song?
Elvis song, yeah.
Yeah, and I was just like, it's gone from heavy metal thrashing to he's just beating someone up who's scrabbling around the floor, like, and then all of a sudden time stands still and he starts serenading her. And then Laura Dern says, "Oh, that was great, but I wanted you to sing 'Love Me Tender.'" And I was just like, "Wow, what goes through this film?" Like,
it's insane, but it doesn't take you out of it at any point.
No.
If anything, it just sucks you more into it. And Elvis is such a recurring theme as well. Nicolas Cage's whole character is kind of modelled on Elvis in a weird way, or his character obviously loves Elvis. That's another element that I don't know how much was in the original story, because this is a film that was kind of made on the fly in certain ways, you know. Loads of it was improvised on the spot. The whole lipstick scene with Laura Dern's mother, played by a real life mother actually, I didn't even know that until you told me, where she's smearing lipstick all over her face in a frenzy of anxiety. That was all improvised apparently, but you couldn't really imagine her character in the film without it. Nicolas Cage, his famous snakeskin jacket was something he brought to the film entirely. It was his own jacket.
And there was a secondhand clothing store, and I saw the snakeskin jacket, and I immediately thought, well, is there a way I could wear that in a movie one day? And David called me about Wild at Heart, and I said, gee, I think it'd be really interesting if I could wear a snakeskin jacket in this picture. And he thought about it, and then he came to rehearsals, and he said, yeah, well, let me work with that. Maybe I can build it into script. And he came up with the idea that sailors should say, this is a snakeskin jacket, and it's a symbol of my individuality and my belief in personal freedom.
And Lynch incorporated that to become a recurring thing where he says it so often that people are kind of like rolling their eyes like, oh, this again about the fucking jacket. But again, it's so visually iconic, and the dialogue and talk around it is so memorable and on the nose but brilliant. That's kind of things that, unless you allow that level of freedom for people to throw in their own ideas and try things on the fly like Lynch does on his films, so much of makes this film so good would never have a chance to happen.
When you have a somewhat of an idea and a kind of a thrilling notion that you'd like to start, and then when you go out, you see the actors in their clothes and in their environment, and more ideas start coming, and it gets very real then.
So let me get this straight. Nicolas Cage, probably after he'd done 11 or 12 big lines of cocaine, pulled up. I'm just imagining it in my head. David Lynch is in his trailer, like smoking 100 cigarettes in a row, just pouring over the script. And he just bursts the door open wearing this crazy jacket made out of snakeskin that you'd fucking craft in Red Dead Redemption after killing 100 snakes, and says, I need to wear this jacket for it's a symbolism of my freedom. And then David Lynch, instead of thinking what a weirdo, spins around in his chair and goes, you got it, that will fit right in.
Yeah,
fucking amazing.
Doesn't just get
man.
it in, but literally makes it a recurring thing in the film. And that's just what's so great about this movie. You said about Nicolas Cage doing coke jokingly, but I've seen him in interviews be really honest about, like, yeah, I use coke to get into roles. Like, if I have to be fucking going nuts in a moment or get a certain energy, fuck it, I'll do coke. Like, he told a story where he gets annoyed at a director for saying, like, are you doing coke on set? And he's like, of course I'm doing coke on set. I'm Nicolas Cage. What do you want from me? That's what you get. But his character in this is so likeable, and it's a classic kind of a Bonnie and Clyde, but they're not really murderers or killers. They're good people, even though Sailor, in the opening scene, kills a man. But it's in self-defense. Lula's crazy mother's first tried to fuck him in the toilets, I guess, to, you know, break up the relationship because she doesn't want Sailor anywhere near Lula. Then she pays some black guy to try and kill him, and he comes at him with a knife, and Sailor beats him to death mercilessly. Gets sent to prison for 1.5 years, gets out on good behaviour, I guess, because he's a likeable guy, and they go off on the run together. And that's why the mum ends up first sending poor Harry Dean Stanton, her, I guess, boyfriend, who she doesn't really give a shit about, off to search for him. And then, because she doesn't respect him, doesn't trust him to get the job done, she turns to Marcellus Santos, some old, wily, creepy gangster figure that she's obviously been fucking off on the sly, and asks him to go and kill Sailor and bring Lula back. So he sends off a whole weird cast of hitmen to track him down and kill him. The creepy woman with a leg brace and crutches, who's pretty hot and also disgusting at the same time in a weird sort of way, who likes to torture people before she kills them on jobs while making out out with her boyfriend and some creepy long-haired white guy that's just always lurking in the background behind him. I don't really get what they're all doing.
Yeah,
They
that's
seem
weird.
he didn't seem to contribute much, but they seem to be a team. You've also got William Dafoe with this gross,
Teeth,
grotesque false teeth. Apparently even people on set were disturbed by it because it was so creepy, and it's one of his best roles. He loves it. Like, he always looks back on this as one of the most fun roles he ever did. And you have the film set up. You've got the road trip movie as they're journeying across, first to New Orleans, the Wicked Witch of the West, Lula's mother, along with the gangster Marcellus Santos, on their trail trying to find him, and it's just fucking nuts.
Don't forget a black guy with coin eye.
Oh yeah. That's the boyfriend of the
that,
weird woman.
Yeah, that was a weird one. He's just in the background with the quarter eye. I mean, the film star, as you said, for some reason reminds me a lot of Con Air. In Con Air, he's a Vietnam vet. He's come back from the war. He's prodded. They try and beat him up. It's totally different in a respect, but you know, he goes to jail, same as Wild at Heart, and pining over his daughter and trying to protect the bunny. Whereas in Wild at Heart, Nicolas Cage is trying to get back to his love. So a lot of similarities there. Obviously coincidental, but it did remind me a lot of Con Air. I mean, I guess Nicolas Cage's character in this one, he could have stopped at some point. He didn't have to repeatedly smash his head against the concrete to his skull had cracked.
Well, in his defense, as he says when he's talking about his public defender that helped get his sentence down, he had no parental guidance.
Oh, yeah.
As he repeats throughout the film. Yeah, I do agree. Like, he definitely has a fucked up side, and it comes out in certain moments where he can be absolutely violent, but it's clear that even from before that moment, he's trying to go straight and clear. He wants to be a good man. He doesn't want to let Lula down. He doesn't want to fuck up.
I've done a few things in my life which I ain't too proud of, but I'll tell you, from now on, I ain't gonna do nothing for no good reason.
Once he's out of prison, they meet up straight away. They decide to skip out on his parole and get on the road. And from that point on, the movie's just so much fun because it's kind of two movies. They don't really interact with her mum or the gangsters or the hitmen that are trying to track him down, or even poor old Harry Dean Stanton, who ends up getting killed by Marcellus Santos because he's got a thing for Lula's mum. He wants to fuck her. He's obviously has fucked her before. He seems to appreciate the fact that she's a crazy fucking bitch, as he calls her, when he hangs up on the phone at one point. But he's just, I don't know, he's enamored by her for some reason. So he says, I'll track down Sailor and I'll bring back Lula, but I have to be able to kill Harry Dean Stanton's character. And she, to be fair to her, she freaks out. She doesn't want it to happen. She calls Harry Dean Stanton, doesn't warn him, but says, like, don't leave the hotel, I'm coming to New Orleans. Meets up with him, but before she can set off with him, he gets caught by the hitmen and gets horribly tortured in some freaky makeout session and then gets killed. I really felt for him. So there's that all going on. And then it's interjected with Lula and Sailor on their journey. And it's just fun. They're going to nightclubs and then they're fucking, and there's, you know, tons of sex scenes. Usually not the biggest fan of sex scenes in films, and they seem to have died out a lot now, but there's something about this film, it adds so much to the flavour of the film, these crazy sex scenes. You know, it's not just, you're not just seeing them confess love to each other, you're seeing these passion as they're going at it, and it's filmed in like low opacity overlays of each other and slow motion shots and montages and awesome graphic pillow talk afterwards from Laura Dern's character, and it's just a wild trip. And obviously you've got sprinkled in here and there your classic Lynchian oddball characters, you know, like the guy at the bar in New Orleans who just makes weird like duck quacking noises. And all the fucking creepy guys they meet in the motel in
what's that place called?
Duck Valley or something weird. What's it called? I can't remember, but in the Texas town later on, and it's just perfect. It's just such easy viewing.
Robert Brenton, that dumb fuck. That stupid shit. That fucking Bob was so fucking dumb, he deserved to die. That asshole.
And if you notice, I have a little Wild at Heart tattoo going here.
Oh, my.
And if you don't mind, baby, I wouldn't mind putting one on you. I sure would love it. Make a girl so happy.
Well, now, how do you put this thing on?
I just use a little water, and you choose the part of your body you want it on, and
I gotta say, at the risk of sounding like a big pervert of Ari the sex scenes, I wasn't familiar with Laura Dern's game.
Yeah.
Like, I just remember her, you know, she'll always be remembered from, you know, Jurassic Park, standing up and seeing the first...
Sifting through dinosaur shit.
Yeah, seeing the first dinosaur, but like, wow, like the sex scenes and, you know, some of the outfits she was wearing when she stood up, her figure, I was like, she was gorgeous, man.
Absolutely. She is sexy. She's one of the best actresses and picks great roles. Like, I think she's very underrated.
Sometimes, Sam, when we're making love, you just about take me right over that rainbow.
I always call them filler scenes, but I guess it's an injustice to say it. You know the scenes in between the scenes where they're actually doing something, like going to the nightclubs. Like, sometimes the filler scenes, I'm like, boring, come on, hurry up. But I thoroughly enjoyed the scenes where they're in like the motel, just chatting about life. Like, as you said, the pillow talk, the way they kiss each other, the way they make love. Sometimes you watch a film, Declan, where it's between supposedly two amazing lovers, and you can kind of sense that maybe the actors and actresses didn't get on with each other in real life. You don't see the spark, but with Cage and Dern, like, I could imagine them as a proper couple. The chemistry was really there. And
chemistry was off the charts, man. It was fucking... You're so right. It was just so good. And yeah, there's just so many great little moments in it that should have been cut conventionally thinking, but just make it so good. You know, the disturbing flashbacks to Lula getting raped by one of her dad's business partners when she's young, and he's obviously punched her in the mouth and her mouth's all bloody. Or later on where she's talking about her cousin Jingle Dale, who was obsessed with Christmas and would put cockroaches on his arsehole. Again, like, I remember seeing that as a kid and just being like so disturbed. Like, there's something so creepy about his screams as he's like trying to push that little black glove away.
Sounds like old Dell's more than just a little bit confused, Peanut.
Great character though, clearly suffering from mental illness. And I love the line where Dern's character says he would freak out when his mum would say to him, it's summer and there's 7 months to Christmas. Well, he's dressed as a Santa Claus. I really liked it as well when they were just driving about. The cinematography, the deserts, the warm weather. There was one scene which I found, even for a David Lynch film, surreal, where they're just driving along Declan and they stumble across a car accident. You know, they get out and the woman's there. She's obviously in shock. She's been in an accident. And to be fair, Cage's character and Dern's character is trying to help her. They're trying to get her back in the car because obviously they're on the run from the law and they don't want any witnesses, I guess. Declan is their point of view of it. And then she just dies and Dern just repeats to Sailor, she died right in front of us. She died right in front of us. And I didn't really get what the point of that was. Did you see a point, or did you just think it had been put in there just as an extra Lynch kind of...
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, like with a Lynch film it might even be the wrong angle to try and figure out the why something's thrown in. Like, I guess it comes right after the moment where Sailor confesses the fact that he used to be a driver for Marcellus Santos.
True.
Whenever I try and say his name, I go to say Carlos, Marcellus Santos, and that he was actually there, although wasn't involved with it, but was there the night that her dad was killed. And then we later find out that the mum actually arranged it, and that cackling that she had a flashback from earlier was from the mum. And then she actually envisions the mum as the Wicked Witch flying a broom outside the window. So it's just after that moment where it's the first moment of possible distrust with Sailor, and, you know, it's a shocking secret to find out. Then she sees this scene where this poor woman, in just a moment like that, they've had a car crash, everyone else is already dead and she's dying, her brain is smashed in. You can literally, she's like nearly touching her brain at one point, saying there's something sticky in my hair. She's confused and her memories are bubbling around together, and she's talking about her purse and her mum's going to be upset and please don't tell my mum, and then she's shouting for her boyfriend. And maybe it was just to ground Laura Dern's character to think, oh, shit can just change like that, like in an instant. And she probably would have eventually got over this new secret and trusted Sailor eventually, either way, but that probably just accelerated it. Or it was just a random David Lynch abstraction for no reason. Really good acting from the girl as well.
Yeah, really good acting, and we're kind of just going around from place to place. Sailor and Lula, At this point, Declan, when they're on the road, they know they're on the run. Sailor's broken his parole conditions, so they can't be caught. They're being hunted down by the gangster. You know, they just want to be together, but they know that behind them, there's malicious characters chasing them, so they can't fully relax and enjoy each other, and it must be difficult for them.
The shadow of her mother's kind of always cast over it, and they're literally driving away from it all. So there's always this feeling that this can't last, and Lula says at one point, like, wouldn't it be great if we loved each other forever and it would make it so simple? But she's not just talking about the loving each other forever, but it's that this will get to last, like, because it feels like the whole world's trying to stop them and prevent them from being together and track them down. But Lula starts to get sick of driving. She's literally feeling car sick. So they decide to stop in a little motel for a couple of days in the middle of nowhere in this shitty little town in Texas. It turns out to not be car sickness. It turns out that she's pregnant. So Sailor takes the news well, but she's kind of like, oh, I love you, but this is carnage, like our lifestyle right now. Bringing a baby into it with you, I don't know, man. Like, you need to shape up a bit. And it seems like he does want to shape up. They're sitting around a campfire with the weirdest host of characters. Like, it feels like David Lynch really just had fun with this moment where he had some crazy old man talking about they're shooting porn in one of the rooms, and some old guy who's supposedly a rocket scientist talking about his dog. And it's actually kind of genius when he was saying, I mentioned my dog. You visualize my dog, but I haven't told you what my dog looks like. And I thought, yeah, actually, I did visualize his dog.
That was weird, but good.
And he throws in another Wizard of Oz reference saying it might even look like Toto.
Yeah.
But during this period, it's the first time they're stopped and they're not on the move anymore, and suddenly they're stopped and they have a moment to kind of analyze where they're at. We already mentioned Lula's having her feelings about it and apprehension. Sailor seems to be going through his own internal battle. You know, can I be a dad? Can I stop fucking things up? Can I stop being self-destructive? You know, I'm trying my best, but carnage seems to follow me around. And all the while, we have William Dafoe as Bobby Peru, the scariest, creepiest villain ever, with these rotten teeth. He's sent there as a hitman, but he wants to do it during a robbery for whatever reason. So he's basically trying to get in Sailor's ear. I have a bank job I want to do. You seem like a guy who would be trustworthy, so let's go do this job and then you'll be set up for life, you and your missus. And Sailor's thinking, fuck yeah, that actually does kind of make sense. But he doesn't know before this, Peru's gone over to their motel while he's been out and basically tried to freak out and attempt to rape Lula, but not actually. It was all, I guess he was never going to rape her, maybe later after he's killed Sailor, but it was like a horrible power play, dominance thing over her. Really disturbing scene. Ends up with a funny line because he's saying to her constantly over and over until he wears her down, saying, say you want to fuck me, say fuck me, say fuck me. And when she finally does, he says, someday, honey, I will. But I gotta get going. He's a monster, man.
I mean, I thought we get enough stick for our teeth from the Americans in England. That's fucking awful. But yeah, unfortunately, Sailor, I guess because of his reservations, and by the way, Declan, I was going to say that even straight towing the line people who are going to become dads for the first time have the same reservations about, well, I've never raised a kid before, I've never been a dad. Can I be a father? Can I be a good dad? You know, I don't know how to do this. And then obviously when the baby's born, it becomes natural, paternal instinct, you know. But everyone has that, and it's probably doubly as bad as because he doesn't see himself as a good man. Unfortunately, succumbs to the logic of Bobby Peru. You know, let me do this heist, let me get this money. And this scene, the actual heist scene, is insane. It's in the desert, the back end of nowhere. There's nothing around it. They put tights over their heads. They go in, and I'm just sitting there thinking, he's crazy, man. He's going to do something. I can see from like when it's cut into his eyes and, you know, his teeth, and he's moving all fucking insane. And, you know, it's going well for about 2 minutes. And then for no reason whatsoever, he just decides to shoot one of the staff members. Coincidentally, there's one police officer that's seemingly gone there, and he's asking, oh, why are you here? And he realizes it's a robbery. And William Dafoe's character comes out, and the cop shoots him. And then this is the most fucked up scene I've seen in a long while, and I didn't actually remember this. He's crazily laughing and he seems to enjoy getting shot, and he just positions the shotgun below his chin and explodes his head, and his head goes flying into the air.
Like the massive brain's kind of contained in the tights and goes off, hits the wall and then flops to the floor. The physicality of it, you can see it wobbling about in sort of slow motion. It's just like so unnecessary, but it's so brilliant.
Sailor's on the floor. He's literally whispering to himself, I've really fucked you over this time, Lula. Whilst this is happening and he's kind of like the dust from the desert is going into his mouth and he knows he's going to get arrested and he knows he's fucked up, we cut back inside to the shop where the staff are scrabbling about in their own blood after being shot with a shotgun. One of their hands has been pure blown off by Peru's shotgun blast, and he's going, oh, they're scrabbling around. The other staff members going, oh, they can sew it back on, and he's like, where is my hand? And
I can't see it,
I can't see my hand. And it then cuts to a dog who has picked up his hand and run off with it, and I'm just sitting there literally like this, like, what is going on?
You do wonder, like, how am I supposed to feel about this? Like, what was David Lynch going for? But it's whatever it is, it's brilliant.
And sadly, Sailor gets taken back to jail again, banged up for 6 years. Poor Laura Dern's character is again there, has to wait for him in jail, but with the added premise of she's pregnant, so like she's now gonna have to become a single mother and wait for Sailor. Thinking there, Declan, is, you know, I got raised this child by myself. I know he's going to wait for me, but it's been 6 years, so what's changed? And Nicolas Cage gets out. Again, she's there waiting for him on release outside in the car, but this time with a little kid, Sailor's son, you know.
You got to give it to her. She is a ride or die bitch.
She's a ride or die bitch, but I guess Nicolas Cage has had 6 long years to think about this. He knows she's pregnant. He knows that she's had his son. And this time, Declan, he's changed his mind. He says to her, look, I love you, but we can't keep doing this. It's best if I just go my own way now. I guess he's reflected in the 6 years that he's again been in jail, again been away from her, and decided to himself that, you know, as much as I try, I'm just a constant fuck up. It's best for her and for my son if I'm out of their life. And he goes over to the son in the car and says some random, like, Poncho said, let the bird fly. I can't remember the exact...
Yeah. If a feeling don't feel good and Poncho's there, the bird
yeah. And he just walks away from it. Now, Laura Dern gets caught in traffic in the middle of this big traffic jam. Nicolas Cage walks his own way, seemingly into a group of...
It's kind of your classic...
hitman.
Classic 80s, 90s, racially diverse gang that never actually exists in real life.
There's a Mexican...
And there's like the whole fucking...
There's a Chinese
university brochure cast of people.
With chains.
What do you faggots want?
It's kind of perfect for what his character's like, because if you actually break it down logically, there's no sense of why does this gang just surround him for no reason. But it's poetically, for his character, perfect because he's self-destructive. He's getting in his own way. He could avoid these things if he needed to, but he said the thing that would make them all beat the shit out of him. And they do beat the shit out of him. And he goes unconscious. And then in my favourite scene in the whole film, this whole sequence that ends the film, you see this purple glow emanating in front of him. And it cuts to this beautiful ball of light coming down out of the sky towards him. Everyone else has disappeared. The streets are empty. And the ball of light opaques a bit and goes faint. And you see the good witch. What's her name again? Gildred or something.
Gildred, yeah.
Fucking wicked. You see the good witch is there, and she tells him, don't be afraid, because he wasn't just doing that for selfless reasons. He didn't run off from Lula and his son just for selfless reasons. He's being a pussy, you know, he's scared. And she tells him, don't be scared. Lula loves you. You love Lula. Go do it. Go fucking grab life. And he wakes up. His nose is all battered and bruised because he's been fucked up. He apologises for referring to the gentlemen as homosexuals and thanks them for teaching them a valuable lesson. Screams Lula to the sky. The musical score kicks in as he's running through the traffic jam, jumping over cars, running along bonnets. People are yelling at him. Jumps onto the bonnet of Lula's car, takes her hand, pulls her up, and starts to sing Love Me Tender by Elvis. The whole diegetic sort of soundtrack disappears and it becomes drums as if he's singing it on stage. Even the sound of Lula's voice sounds kind of like the sound design of it is as if she's on stage getting picked up by a microphone, and he sings Love Me Tender as the credits start to roll.
Love me tender, love me sweet, never let me go.
What a fucking film.
Now, I must say, that ending, Lynch actually changed it from the source material. In the source material, A Wild at Heart, it's an unhappy ending. They don't actually get back together. But Lynch thought, throughout the whole film and what's gone on, I prefer it if they do get back together. And I like that, you know, and I love that ending.
It would have felt wrong to the film you'd watched for it not to be a happy ending like that, because it had been disturbing and grounded and looked at the worst fucked up sides of humanity already. An unhappy ending in this moment would have just fucking been a sucker punch, and it's not that kind of film. Like, it might be disturbing, it might be twisted, it might look at depraved moments and things that humans do to each other, really fucked up shit, but it's the kind of film that should leave you with a smile on your face. And I just remember the first time I watched it, I just couldn't believe it. I had no idea it was possible to take these kind of chances and be this unusual and unpredictable with a film. Just beautiful. Had a lasting effect on me, pretty much started my love of cinema. So, do you recommend Wild at Heart?
As I said earlier, it's sad that David Lynch has departed us, but at the same time, as a film fan, I'm grateful for what he done. He really was a master, and I think over the coming weeks I'm actually gonna go back on his whole film catalogue, and even probably Twin Peaks, I reckon. And you know, I need to look at this film, all of his films again. I came in here thinking Blue Velvet was my number one Lynch film. I'm gonna re-watch Blue Velvet again, and I'm gonna decide between those two of being my favourite, because Wild at Heart for me is just it's a masterpiece, really. On a lot of levels, it shouldn't work with the Wizard of Oz references and some of the characters. I even ended up liking William Dafoe's horrible character, and that's amazing to me, you know. I thought, what a guy. Like, this is one of David Lynch's best films, and he has a lot of very good films, so I would highly recommend Wild at Heart, 100% from me.
100%.
Hey, my snakeskin jacket! Thanks, baby! Did I ever tell you that this here jacket represents a symbol of my individuality and my belief in personal freedom?